Kunst der Versammlung.
El arte de la asamblea.
The art of assembly.
Welcome to the 33rd edition of The Art of Assembly. This podcast is based on a live event that took place on November 29th at the Museum Gunzenhauser in Chemnitz, Germany. The Art of Assembly is a nomadic series of lectures and conversations that has, for about 5 years now, explored the possibilities and limitations of human gatherings in art, activism and politics. If you're interested, you can find videos and podcasts of all previous lectures, as well as additional material on our website, art-of-assembly.net. My name is Florian Malzacher. I'm a curator and writer and the host of this series. This edition is part of The Questions, a project by the Manchester-based artist group Quarantine, who have been working with local people across generations in the twin cities of Manchester and Chemnitz. It is also the third edition in which we look at cities as places of assembly, and the second in which we approach cities as palimpsests. A palimpsest originally refers to a manuscript or writing material on which earlier writings have been erased or overwritten, yet still remain faintly visible beneath the new text. The term thus evokes multiple layers that coexist and reveal traces of change over time. In this sense, cities too are palimpsests, continuously written and rewritten through traditions, conflicts, identities, and ideologies that shape their present realities. Over the next 1.5 hours, we want to move beyond merely analyzing the dysfunctions of the cities we inhabit, their shortcomings and biases, and instead explore how things might be otherwise, how urban life could be imagined and assembled differently. How could our cities look like if they were not still mainly designed around the needs and imaginations of Western white men? What if urban planning began with the perspective of children, the elderly, migrants, and those who are usually planned for, but rarely listened to? We want to examine how intergenerational, intercultural, and inclusive approaches can transform the way cities are thought, built, and inhabited. Our guests are literary scholar and professor at the Chemnitz University of Technology, Cecile, from whom we borrowed the concept of cities as palimpsests, in which overlapping spatial and representational layers reveal processes of change, power, and interpretation within urban space. Canadian artist and theatre maker Darren O'Donnell, founder of the group Mammalian Diving Reflex, discusses how participatory models that center children and intergenerational exchange can impact the social fabric. Sajad Habibi, expert resident elected to the Migrant Advisory Board of Chemnitz, brings perspectives from migrant and refugee communities into urban policy and representation. I will just start with introducing Cecile Santen. Cecile is the chair of English literature at Chemnitz University of Technology with research interests in post-colonial theory and literatures. Literary urban studies, Indian English literature, Black and Asian British writing, and narratives of flight and asylum. She's the author of Rereading Shakespeare in Post-Colonial Literatures from 2015 and Broken Mirrors, Interkulturalität am Beispiel der indischen Lyrikerin Sujata Bhatt von 1998. She has co-edited several volumes focusing on literary urban studies and has edited several publications on refugeism. You currently lead the research project Postcolonialism in the Metropolis within the TU Chemnitz initiative Palimpsestic Spaces. Since 2024, you have served as president of the Association for Literary Urban Studies, and in 2025, you were elected adjunct professor at IIT Bhilai in India. I'm very happy you're here and hand over the microphone to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Florian, for this very kind introduction, also for inviting me to this wonderful event. I'm very happy to be here. I have been living in Chemnitz for 16 years, so it's actually my home ground now. And I'm very happy to contribute to this wonderful the art of assembly idea here. And I'm glad that we have assembled here as well. So my talk is about palimpsestic spaces, erasure, resistance, and literature as counter-archive. And as Florian has already said, I have been engaging in my research in palimpsests, and there are two examples here on the slide. On the left-hand side, you find the Edwin Smith papyrus, the world's oldest surviving surgical document written in hieratic script in ancient Egypt around 1600 BC. And on the right-hand side, you find a parchment from 1189 about the foundation of the Hogelande Chapel in Söwe Archive in Middelburg. Why I show these two images is we have two very expensive, at that time, at their own time, expensive writing materials, papyrus and parchment. And the palimpsest, as Florian has also pointed out, is, so to say, a recycling method. So because the materials were so expensive, they were prepared for reuse. And the term has been adopted to the scientific vocabulary of various disciplines. It is material focused, and there's an understanding of first developed in papyrology, paleography, codicology, and historical sciences, so all sciences that engage in the research of scripts. So the term derives from ancient and medieval everyday language. Palimpsest means scraped again or cleaned again, originally referred, as said, to the reuse writing materials, also in the sense of historical recycling. And Sarah Dillon, who's written the book Palimpsest, terms it or defines it as layering, erasure, and superimposition. And the palimpsest, as you can see here on the left-hand side, is a badly made reused material, because the old script shines through and it's used to write over it again. And sometimes the old scripts came or appeared much, much later. And there is a peak in palimpsesting between the 7th and 9th century, and the research in palimpsests, like this one here, took place in the mid-19th century. So the term has been employed today in areas as diverse as architecture, archaeology, geography, biochemistry, genetics, neuroscience, information technology, etc. So in quite a number of disciplines. However, the palimpsest as metaphor implies here also intertextuality, more or less, and this has been done already quite early, but cultural theoretical issues of the concept of the palimpsest are largely inspired by literary studies, and here in particular Gérard Genette with his hypertextuality theory, which implies that texts relate to each other, so that there is a basic text and then there's something put on top of it, and the two are in a relationship, so intertextual. This, of course, goes beyond this rather materialistic approach that we also follow. So Thomas de Quincey used the palimpsest also as a memory metaphor for the functioning of the human mind already in 1845. And this influenced later theories of cultural memory studies. Jan Assmann, Aleida Assmann, whom you might be familiar with to some extent, who look at memory spaces as well. And Genette's concept succeeded due to literary studies expansion into other fields, other areas, in particular with regard to intertextuality. My colleague and I, Marianne Nebelin, who is in antiquity and the reception of antiquity, and I have come up with the idea of palimpsestic spaces with regard to looking at the palimpsest also as a spatial concept, because it is material in itself already, so and occupies some kind of space over time and discourses. So a palimpsestic space, this is our definition, is a research object or material medial described through approaches grounded in spatial theory. It is characterized by a layered structure that has been shaped and transformed by operations such as erasure, rewriting, and depalimpsesting, for instance, architectural reconstructions. One example might be the Acropolis in Athens, which, as it is there, is a Hellenistic kind of building now, but this was just a time period of 100 years, and all the other time periods have been erased to make it into the Acropolis that we know today, and that we also, of course, treasure. But it's only 100 years time frame that this Hellenistic era took shape. So we also define the palimpsestic space with regards to invisibility, destruction, loss, but also surplus, of course, because if you erase something and put something else there, you have the surplus. So this implies that the layered space bears traces of palimpsesting processes that point to its transformations over time and within discourse. And when it comes to discourse, we have to think also maybe of the Humboldt Forum as a good example of how a palimpsestic space has taken shape over many, many decades, centuries even, that it has become the Humboldt Forum that we have today. It was a contested space. It was in many, many discussions, so there's a huge discourse around it. Maybe you can say a bit more about it later. So interestingly, the term palimpsest has had a strong reception in studies of city literatures, and it's interesting that, for instance, my colleague at the Bauhaus University Weimar, who is in urban studies, they've been using the palimpsest as well. So, and we have quite a number of kind of connections here. And therefore, we argue cities like the palimpsest are in a continuous process. And my argument here on top is space is never free of ideology. When we think about a space such as the, for instance, the Brixton Windrush Square in London, it's a performative space of or for the Black British community. And the question then is, of course, whom does the city belong to? Who has the right to be commemorated in a city in a spatial context? I would like to give you a few literary examples now, because I come from literary studies, as Florian has also pointed out. And I would like to give you one short poem by Pakistani, British, Welsh writer Imtiaz Dakar, and the title is Hiraeth, Old Bombay, or it also goes by the title The Nas Cafe. I would have taken you to the Nas Cafe if it had not shut down. I would have taken you to the Nas Cafe for the best view and the worst food in town. We would have drunk flat beer and cream soda and sweated on plastic chairs at the Nas Cafe. We would have looked down over the dusty trees at cars creeping along Marin Drive round the bay to Era Cinema and the talk of the town. We would have held hands in the Nas Cafe over sticky rings on tabletop, knee locked on knee at the Nas Cafe, while we admired the distant stock exchange, Taj Mahal hotels, the Sundog Gateway. We would have nursed a drink at the Nas Cafe, and you would have stolen a kiss from me. We would have lingered in the Nas Cafe till the day slid off the map into the Arabian Sea. I would have taken you to Bombay if its name had not slid into the sea. I would have taken you to the place called Bombay if it was still there, and if you were still here, I would have taken you to the Nas Cafe. So what we have here is actually a palimpsestic space in a literary context, namely a poem that mourns the loss, first of all, of Bombay, because it has been renamed into Mumbai in 1995, India opening to global capitalism, so therefore also transforming the space where the Nas Cafe was into an office space, so it's no longer there. So the mourning of a very special place here where theater people met, where film people of the Bombay film industry met, of Bollywood, and it's also a mourning poem home, of course, of the loss of the partner. So, and this here, how it's described also by semantic references to Bombay, to the sites, etc., that doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, so we have here a palimpsestic space in literature. I have another quotation for you from a book which is called XXXIII, Writings from the Belly of the Metropolis. And it was originally written in Hindi, published between 2005 and 6, or written and then published in Hindi, later on in 2010 translated into English. And the quotation goes like this: "It takes many years for a place to become a settlement, but a settlement is turned barren in merely 2 days. All around things are being broken, felled. Some people are watching houses being pulled down. Each time dust rises when a house falls, they don't turn their faces away. They had plastered the walls and roofs of their houses with their memories. Today, those memories have turned into dust and are spreading out into the air." So to tell you a bit more about this book and the quotation that I have just read out, the book is unique, a unique literary artifact. So originally in Hindi, as I said, it is a collection of anecdotes, recollections, and musings from and on various bastis, informal housings in Delhi, which have been demolished in preparation for the Commonwealth Games in 2010. So people were evicted from their housings and had to move places. And the government didn't do anything about this. It violated their spaces through very violent actions here. They came with horses, etc., and demolished. So the book project is a collection of these memories of the people who lived there in these different houses and bastis, and it gives, so to say, a testament to what this space looked like, how everyday life was going on, and also the traumatic experience of eviction and demolishing. So thus it can be read as a palimpsestic space, since the diaries act as witnesses to state-sponsored acts of violence when the writers reveal the way they are constantly pushed to the periphery of the world-class city. And in that sense, it is also a document of counter-narrative, counter-archive. It's a document of resistance, we can say. However, the space has been lost. So it is only the traces, this is again from the book, it is only the traces of the place, Nangla Manchi, that's the name of it, that are being erased. Nangla will continue to nurture inside each person who is being made to leave. Nangla will live on through stories that are recollections of Nangla. Then Nangla will not need a place in the map in order to continue to breathe. So the book, in that sense, becomes a material item as a palimpsestic space for remembering the people who lived there. You might be all familiar with 2015, going back in time a little bit, the location of the illegal refugee camp in Calais. And Calais, the refugee camp, was placed or was situated in a Sevesto zone of toxic remains and remnants, and people built apart from some kind of social buildings like a dome, a school, library, etc., their own huts. And I would like to introduce you to the graphic novelist Kate Evans, who wrote the book Threats from the Refugee Crisis. It's an autobiographical text by Kate Evans, who was there for a few days and then has taken a record of the people who live there. Here you can see her drawing the refugees, evoking thereby empathy, bringing the refugees closer to us, of course, in a comic way, because a graphic novel is also in terms of genre, some kind of comic novel. So comics goes back to this. However, we see her here in close relation with the refugees. And on the right-hand side, I don't know whether you can see it, she works also with media, with other media, with real-life media, which you can see here on the painted phone, or the drawn phone. This is also an image here. The bread ban, people were arbitrarily banned from bringing bread or sleeping bags or tents into that space here. And this is again here the intermediate aspect that you can see, so another layer coming on top of it. A further layer can also be seen in the frames, which are made out of lace, because Calais is well known as an industrial city that is famous for lace making. And Kate Evans has taken lace in nearly all her frames, or in the frames themselves, like in this one, here on the right-hand side, where there is the eviction and destruction, in particular of the huts and tents that people lived in. So therefore, I would also argue that her book, in that sense, is testament to what was there, even though we cannot speak about a lively community in a refugee camp. However, there was a sense of community building there. And Evans's book is, so to say, testament to that, and in that sense also depicts this camp as a palimpsestic space. My last example is Marie Brassard's The Darkness, La Noirceur, from 2003. The Montreal-born Franco-Canadian playwright and actor Marie Brassard writes in the foreword to her play, "Sometimes I wish I were a political activist, but as a direct witness to these urban devastations, I cannot remain silent. What I can offer are images, music, sounds, and poetry." In light of the growing importance that post-colonial metropolises have assumed in the course of globalization, Brassard's unsettling observation of urban devastations captures the very core of capitalist destruction, of which literature functions as the voice of resistance and archive. And the play is about the actress and a friend, and who are evicted by and by from Ontario Street in Montreal, and she mourns, so to say, or she kind of takes in the terrible destruction that is going on through gentrification. The whole area has been gentrified, and the whole community has been moved to other places. And the play is about these aspects. So Brassard's play portrays Montreal high-rise gentrification area, where earlier layers of urban life and diversity are overwritten by luxury redevelopment. The city becomes an urban palimpsest. Traces of former residents, cultures, and communal life are erased and rendered unreadable, as the play bitterly suggests. The actress witnesses and narrates these layered destructions, her home, her neighbors' spaces, and the surrounding multicultural district reveal structural violence and capitalist displacement. And we have hidden objects that are destroyed. They were hidden in rooms, but destroyed, scattered artifacts, and unreadable hieroglyphs. And these symbolize fragmented urban memory and the loss of cultural imprints. And through a stream of consciousness passages, vivid images, and sensory narration, the play acts as a literary counter-archive, preserving erased voices and resisting the totalizing logic of gentrification. And maybe as a sum up for all my examples, literature thus becomes a space where urban memory survives, even as the physical city is overwritten, as in many of the examples I have given you, by neo-capitalist forces. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. I think that's a very good backdrop for the other talks we will have. So we continue with our next speaker, Darren O'Donnell. Darren O'Donnell is an urban cultural planner, novelist, essayist, playwright, filmmaker, performance director, and the artistic director and founder of the acclaimed company Mammalian Diving Reflex. Your books include Your Secret Sleeps With Me, 2004, Social Acupuncture, 2006, in which you argue for an aesthetics of civic engagement, and Haircuts by Children and Other Evidence for a New Social Contract, from 2018, in which you propose the cultural sector as a pilot for a new social contract with children. Your performances include Haircuts by Children, All the Sex I've Ever Had, the Children's Choice Award, and many others, performances that have been shown in many, many festivals and venues around the world. And I'm very happy you're here.
Thanks, Florian, for the introduction, and thanks for inviting me, and thanks for coming to everybody. So what I'm going to do is introduce, where is it? There it is. So I'm going to introduce this idea of the avuncular institution and then use my company as a case study. I'll talk about I'll introduce the company, the work that we do, so you understand a little bit about that, and then the youth engagement model that we've evolved, and the sort of, I think, very interesting role that we've evolved as an institution within a particular community in Toronto, and then how we've tried to expand and do that in other places as well. So I just want to start first with this word avuncular. It's a struggle to come up with a good word to describe what I'm trying to describe. Avuncular comes from, it refers to uncle. It's uncle-like. And so it's friendly like an uncle, perhaps encouraging like a good uncle, and kind of dorky maybe, goofy, ambition, peinlich. Is that the right word? Peinlich, cringe, all of these things. There's elements of that I'm sort of trying to express. But the biggest thing is working with young people in a way that is fun and kind of goofy. So these are some of the projects that the company has created. Florian mentioned a couple of them. I'll just describe them in just really quickly. Haircuts by Children, which we just did in Leipzig, actually, I think in September. With this, we train a bunch of kids to cut hair. We take a week to do that so that they are confident, but not so that they are good, just confident. Then we pay them to operate a salon for the entire weekend. They make some money, and they make some ridiculous haircuts on people. The night walks with teenagers. We work with a bunch of teenagers and design a walk through an area of the city that the teenagers are not familiar with. They design it in a place where they don't know, and then adults come and they explore the city together as a sort of tribe, an intergenerational tribe. The other thing I should mention is that it's the encounter that's really important in all of this work, the encounter between the client who's getting their haircut and the young person, just the fun that they have together, negotiating this very awkward situation where scissors are right beside your eyes. Sex, Drugs, and Criminality is a project, again, with teenagers, where we'll work with as famous people as we can find in a given locale. We've worked with politicians, we've worked with rappers, we've worked with authors, and we get teenagers to interview them about their relationship to sex, drugs, and crime. So what kind of crazy sex have you had? What drugs have you done? And what crimes have you committed? And the teenagers interview these famous people, and these famous people come with a lot of generosity and try to share exactly, what they've learned through the difficult times of their life. And it's the encounter. The Children's Choice Awards is a project that we've done many times. It's an awards ceremony where we take a bunch of kids to see all of the shows in a festival, shows that are not meant for children, shows that are meant for a general public, a contemporary audience. Like the Route Triennale, we spent 3 years, every festival of the Route Triennale for 3 years. We had a jury, and then the kids just give out awards at the end, but it's really the intervention in the festival that's important. These kids get red carpeted everywhere they go. We have a little minivan that will drive up, and the red carpet. When they come into the theater, they're announced. We must applaud them. They're the last people to come into the theater. So it's giving space to young people where they typically don't have space. Another, the sort of sister project to that is called Eat the Street, and we work with a bunch of restaurants. It'll happen at a festival. There'll be restaurants that have agreed to have dinners for children, and then a public is invited to come, and then the children are reviewing the restaurants and assessing them, and then they give out awards also at the end. But it's an excuse to have a community dinner where adults and children who don't know each other are having intense conversations, as you can see here. My favorite part of this picture is the way that kid's hand is sort of flipped, like he's really explaining something that's important to him, and you can sort of see that in his hand. I feel that he's really trying to express something there. And finally, a project that we're still developing called The Last Minutes Before Mars, where we work with a group of teenagers, and the question we ask them is, what for you is a beautiful, perfectly ordinary day? A day where there's nothing that's special that happens, but it's still beautiful in its ordinariness, and it's a project about mindfulness and about what we are at risk of losing with climate change, or what is at risk of losing if we try to colonize other planets. If we try to go to Mars, life's not going to be great. And it's about the simple things in life. And it's a mixed reality project where the audience is in and out of VR goggles. So those are the projects, and those have all been created in collaboration with children originally. And the original situation was in Toronto back in 2005. I was living in a neighborhood with a particular school there, and it was a neighborhood that was an interesting neighborhood because it was a landing spot for immigrants and refugees from, at that time, it was places like Tibet. There was a lot of Tibetan refugees, Vietnamese refugees from a little bit earlier than that. There were Hungarian Roma refugees. There were Sri Lankan, Tamil refugees from Sri Lanka. So there was this very interesting mix of people that are living in that neighborhood. But then also the other thing that was happening in the neighborhood was there was very rapid gentrification. It was sort of this cultural hub. There were boutique hotels springing up, 2 boutique hotels that sort of were cultural centers. Many galleries along there, lots of cafes. So there was this collision happening between this population, the sort of population that was gentrifying, and then the artists who were sort of in the middle of it all. Artists like myself who were creating socially engaged work, who wanted to work with these kids, but then also we were showing in these galleries and enjoying the fact that we're having parties at these galleries. So the idea was how can we bring these populations and smash them together and sort of see what comes out of this. What came was those projects that I mentioned. A few of those projects came from the first initial encounter with these young people and this one school, and that was from 2005 to 2010, where we did a lot of projects with the school. We were the artists in residence there for a couple of years, did dozens of projects, and then in 2010 we sort of distilled it down, stopped working with the school, and just worked with the young people who wanted to work with us. And at that point, sort of gathered a group of young people who were about 14 years old at the time. We'd been working with them since they were 10 years old. So this group came on. At the same time, I was doing a master's in urban planning with a focus on youth cultural engagement and community economic development. And so this was the model that came out of that research, and that research was done using my company and my collaboration with these young people as a bit of a laboratory. So this is the model, and I'll take you through the different principles and how they sort of roll out. It's called the SMILE, the acronyms to the SMILE, the Secession Model of Youth Labor Engagement, the SMILE. So the first thing to note is that youth labor engagement, the young people are understood to be working. We compensate them with money as much as we can, even small honorariums, it doesn't matter. They are working. This has become even more obvious since the model, which was 2010 in there, conceived, thinking now just the labor that young people do online, the labor that young people do, on all the apps, all of the free content that they're generating that bring our eyeballs to the apps, and that we all do too, but young people are particularly prolific in that. So young people are laboring a lot. It's not being counted as labor, and this kind of socially engaged work with young people, we considered it to be labor. So that was an important part. secession, we very early on, right from that time in 2010 when we found the 14-year-olds, we decided that we were going to try to give these kids the company. They were going to secede us. This was a secession plan. We want these kids we're working with, and there were about 20 of them, we want them to be running the company. Even if that was a utopian proposal, even if that was completely not going to happen because they had more interesting things to do, they had more lucrative things to do. There were kids who wanted to be accountants. There were kids who wanted to be money managers, who wanted to make millions. But we said, okay, well, let's work with these guys anyway. We'll try to give these kids the company, whatever that means. And that changed our relationship to them in a very sort of series of cascading kind of implications. The first of which is they are our colleagues. So our relationship to them is collegiality, which means that we have to share the back end stuff that's happening. They're not just having fun in the art projects while the rest of us are writing the grants and are sweating over the budgets. As soon as possible, we got them to write the grants and sweat over the budgets too, got them to understand what was going on in the sort of the behind the scenes. And then we also dragged them to lots of events like this. Any kind of time that I was asked to do a talk in Toronto, I dragged them. If I got a fee, they got the fee. So they are our colleagues. Even at 14, we were thinking, these guys are our colleagues, we must treat them. And therefore, sharing our networks. Social capital is the next point. So we are always trying to share our networks with them, make sure they were plugged in with what was going on, and started to understand the general landscape in Toronto at the time. In Toronto, it's expanded since then, but in Toronto, just what the landscape of the performance and art scene was, and what was the scene along this one street. We were artists, and they were teenagers and residents at one of these boutique hotels when we had an office there. Anytime we had Friday night sessions at various galleries that would lend us their space for months. Every Friday we would be there just messing around and coming up with projects. So we really tried to connect them up with all of these artistic activities that were happening along this street. And then, of course, the next thing that happens is friendship. In our sector, a lot of us are friends with each other, and that's part of why we love working in the cultural sector, is because it's not such a hard division between life and work. And your life infects your work, and your work infects your life. So this was also an important part. I had many parties at my apartment where I had intergenerational parties. We made sure everybody was safe. Nobody was given booze when they shouldn't have been given booze. We were very careful. We had to keep it all on the up and up. But friendship was an important part, connecting them up. And all of this sort of comes and wraps together in this concept of habitus, which is comes from Pierre Bourdieu, is sort of how I'm familiar with it. And he translates it as feel for the game. And it was, how do you share a feel for the cultural game with a bunch of kids who are the children of refugees and immigrants who do not have any kind of attachment to the cultural scene, who do not attend any cultural stuff? How do we get them feeling a feel for the game really, really when they're quite young? And it was all of this stuff adds up to sharing this feel for the game so that they have it more in their bones because they've been doing this since they were kids. I'll just sort of wrap it up now. I won't even talk about that. I forget. I won't talk about that. I'll just get into a few case studies and just sharing who these people are. So this is Virginia Antoni Pillai. I met her when she was 14 in 2010. She's 29 years old now. She's the company's operations coordinator and a creative producer. So she runs the show. She's older now. She's not that young. She's 29 now. So she looks super young there. But she's also a creative producer. She handles mostly creating the new work and the new work projects that we have. So she's supervising a bunch of projects. This Mars project that I mentioned, she just produced something we just did in Melbourne. So she's been with us forever, and she has a Indian and a Russian background, for your information. Now this one is interesting. Isabel's interesting because she was one of the kids from the earliest, she was one of the earliest kids. I think I've been working with her since she was 10. And she's still a bit young in that photograph. Now she's also 29 years old. And she studied accounting and wanted to be an accountant. And so went off to be an accountant, had a job at Deloitte, an international accounting firm, was doing a great job there, got a little bit bored, wanted to know if something was happening with us. We needed a financial coordinator, so we hired her to do that. No, I'm getting this wrong. She was doing financial coordination for us part-time when she was in university, and then when she was tired of Deloitte, she asked if there's anything else. So we said, okay, come on as an emerging producer. The point I think with Isabel that's really interesting is that the model works even if somebody's not particularly interested in the arts. They're just there to have a fun time. She's really just there to have a fun time. She doesn't have a huge interest in the arts, but she's learning how to produce the work and has this background in accounting. So it's not just the art kids that this model works with. It works with anybody in our experience. This is another interesting case. Joseph Rufin, he's our finance manager. He came to us because one of the youth, Dana Lou, found us a finance manager, Julianne Rufin. Julianne didn't want to work with us anymore because she wanted to get more money working at a bigger place. So she got her dad, who's also an accountant, to work with us part-time. He introduced us to his other daughter, Janelle, who studied theater. And so the whole crew has worked with us, and Janelle will continue to work with us. Joseph worked with us. So we're working with a whole family that was also in this neighborhood. And I'll finish with Nguyen. Excuse me, Nguyen, who this is a really funny case. So Nguyen is somebody that I've known since he was 14, Nguyen Luding. He's development officer, so he's doing fundraising, and he also is an artistic associate with the company, coming up with project ideas. The interesting thing about him, he's a Tibetan refugee, and it wasn't until a couple of years ago, I've known the guy since 2010, so over, heading now 15 years, I learned that his great-grandfather was the last mayor of Lhasa, the capital of Tibet, before the Chinese came in and took it, and he's got his cousin, whose 14-year-old cousin is a reincarnation of this high-level Lama, which, whatever you believe about that, it doesn't matter. The point is that suddenly the company is creating these networks and is in this very unusual milieu. We're doing a project about Buddhism, about reincarnation. We've got this kid who's reincarnated from this other guy. I've seen video of him hugging his previous life's mother because the person who he's a reincarnate of died quite young. So I've got a video of him going to Tibet and hugging his mother, this cousin. So working with Nguyen, it opens up this very different network that I wouldn't have had I not started working with these guys at a very young age. And just finishing here, this is where we've tried to reproduce it with varying degrees of success, lots of failure. It's not gone as great as it has in Toronto, but these are the different organizations who we've tried to reproduce the model at. We're just finishing up with the Humboldt Forum, which Cecile mentioned, and we've just starting now with St. Martin's Youth in Melbourne. So we've done that. And the other thing I'll just also share is that this is a graph that shows between 2021 and 2025 the instances we've had of people who've started with us as teenagers and been on the road. This came in very handy. We discovered this in 2021 during the pandemic. We discovered that when a lot of us couldn't fly, if we just flew people who were relatively local to a place, people who we'd known since they were teenagers, and who we trusted, we were able to keep working when many other theater companies weren't, because when things were shut down, but when they were open over there but not open over there, Canadians, we shut down quite hard. So we were able to have a lot of work happen even despite that. And the other thing is that this also means that we put less people on long haul flights. We get people going close. We've got people we've worked with in Seoul who go to Tokyo. So we're able to sort of deal with that a little bit. It's a little on the sort of climate change front. So don't have a heart attack because all of these flights, these are just one or two people going around, and we're always sourcing the main part of the team locally. We measure the impact. This is important. It's not just on the lives of the youth, which you might typically do when you're taking a look at long-term youth engagement, but the lives of those of us running the company. We have to look at ourselves and the impact on the company itself. Biggest challenge is the need for champions. There's and continuity versus careerism. Often in many of these festivals, the leaders of the festivals will be hopping from festival to festival, climbing up the career ladder. We need people who are lifers, who want to be cultural co-parents with us and bring these kids and bring the kids local to where they are along this long journey and get them into this cross-pollinating sort of intergenerational international network that in that last slide. I've got the book. I think I made it available. I think it's available, yeah. So you can find it on the Art of Assembly. That's a book about the model and just about the general idea of giving more space to young people and letting that affect your company in this case, or your work or your city. And that's it. Thanks.
Thanks so much. I'm very happy that Sajad Habibi is here. Sajad is a member of the Migration Advisory Board of the City of Chemnitz and the founder of the Afghan-German Association, which support newcomers with language learning, administrative processes, and cultural integration. He also provides German tutoring for foreign children at the Chemnitzer Schulmodell and is involved in several local integration projects. You studied law and political science in Afghanistan and worked for a year as a lawyer focusing on defending the rights of women, children, and socially disadvantaged individuals. And currently you are preparing for your second bachelor's degree in Germany, and I'm very happy you're here. And Sajad will speak in German, and we later on will have a mixed language conversation, so that's...
Hallo und vielen Dank, dass ich heute hier sprechen darf. Ich werde kurz mich vorstellen. Mein Name ist Sajad Habibi und ich bin Mitglied des Migrationsbeirats Stadt Chemnitz. Und seit ein paar Jahren arbeite ich mit verschiedenen Projekten in Stadt Chemnitz, die Richtung Integration und Teilhabe arbeiten. Also das Thema, das ich möchte darüber sprechen, ist, dass wie unsere Städte aussehen könnten, wenn wir alle Perspektiven von alle Menschen berücksichtigen. Also ich nenne ein paar Beispiele zuerst, damit wir klarkommen, dass die Städte, die alle Menschen erleben, die Städte also ganz unterschiedlich. Also zum Beispiel von Kindern, die suchen die Orte, die können einfach frei spielen können, zum Beispiel. Oder Orte, die können sie entdecken, also coole Ideen dort machen können. Oder für Frauen, die suchen, also zum Beispiel beim Arbeit gleich richtig Lohn. Oder beim anderen, oder die Sicherheit von Frauen, zum Beispiel, wenn die gehen auf der Straße im Dunkeln. Wie fühlen sie sich, wenn sie tot sind? Fühlen sie sich sicher oder nicht? Oder für alte Menschen, die am meisten suchen für Sitzgelegenheit in der Stadt. Und für Migranten oder Migrantinnen, die suchen die Orte, die sich willkommen fühlen können. Oder die Orte, die finden, die Leute sprechen einfache Sprache dort. Also dieses Beispiel habe ich genannt, weil ich wollte nur das sagen, dass die alle Menschen in der Stadt erleben nicht die gleiche Situation. Also, die alle Leute erleben diese Erfahrungen in der Stadt unterschiedlich. Und besonders noch was Problem von den Leuten hier ist, die werden kaum gehört werden, besonders die Migrantinnen und Migranten, die hier sind in Chemnitz. Durch meine Arbeit, ich rede täglich mit den Leuten einfach und treffe ich verschiedene Leute aus verschiedenen Ländern auch, weil wir arbeiten immer zusammen mit dem anderen Community hier in der Chemnitz. Und was sie sich immer erzählen von Leben in Chemnitz besonders, dass sie fühlen sich nicht gehört zu diesem Stadt, also weil die haben keine Stimme hier, weil das ist sehr wichtig von den Migranten, die hier sind, eine Stimme zu haben, weil besonders die Entscheidungen, die in die Stadt getroffen werden, also die Migranten haben keinen Teil davon, diese Entscheidung, obwohl die sind am meisten die Leute, die von diesen Entscheidungen getroffen werden. Und dadurch, was ich wollte noch sagen, ist, dass wir können eine bessere Stadt haben, wenn wir alle Meinungen hören, wenn die alle, die hier sind, sich fühlen, dass meine Meinung ist wichtig. Ich habe eine Stimme. Und so können wir eine bessere Stadt schaffen, damit die alle sich wohlfühlen können. Und auch die Idee von dem Projekt, das wir gegründet haben, ich selber als Migrant habe ich diese Erfahrung erlebt. Und als ich neu nach Deutschland ankam, und die alle Sachen für mich waren neu. Die Kultur war neu, also die Leute waren neu, die Sprache neu. Und was Herausforderungen, die ich erlebt habe, war diese Motivation für mich, dass ich diesen Verein mit meinen Freundinnen gegründet habe, dass wir auch von den Leuten, die neu hier sind, ein bisschen unterstützen können und sie das Gefühl geben, dass sie hier willkommen sind. Also weil es ist nicht einfach mit dem deutschen Leuten einfach in Kontakt zu kommen und einfach Freunde finden hier, also als Migranten, weil die große Problem ist die Sprache, die ist echt eine große Herausforderung für Migranten. Weil wenn du in eine neue Stadt gehst und neue Sprache ist, wenn du die Sprache nicht verstehst, dann kannst du nicht mit den Leuten einfach kontaktieren, kannst du nicht kommunizieren mit den Leuten. Und sowas Herausforderungen wollten wir einfach was zurückgeben von den Leuten, die neu sind und sich hier wohlfühlen können. Und deswegen haben wir afghanische Deutsche Verband gegründet. Was wir hier machen, ist einfach von denjenigen, die neu sind in die Stadt, helfen, ein bisschen unterstützen wegen Bürokratie, was sehr wichtig in Deutschland ist und zu viel ist auch. Besonders ist es schwer für die Leute, die ganz neu sind und Sprache nicht können. Für denen wir wollten einfach ein bisschen helfen. Und außerdem, wir wollten einfach eine Brücke bauen zwischen Kulturen, deutsche Kultur und afghanische Kultur, weil die beiden Kulturen sind ganz unterschiedliche Kulturen. Was wir aufgewachsen sind und was habe ich hier in 3,5 Jahren erlebt habe, es war ganz anders. Also wenn ich sage, dass ich bin schockiert, also Kulturschock sagen die Leute hier, ich glaube schon. Das haben wir erlebt und das erlebt jede Migranten, die neu sind. Und das, was wir machen, dass wir sind aktiv in den verschiedenen Veranstaltungen in der Stadt Chemnitz und wir wollten, also das Ziel war immer, dass wir unsere Kultur zeigen und gegenseitig, dass die deutsche Kultur auch von unseren Leuten erzählen und erklären, wie funktioniert alles hier, weil es kommt immer Kulturmissverständnis zwischen deutschen Leuten, die hier wohnen und die Migranten, die hier sind. Und das Missverständnis, wo wir wollten einfach darüber mehr arbeiten und mehr erklären, dadurch, dass wir aktiv waren bei verschiedenen Veranstaltungen in der Stadt. Besonders dieses Jahr war Kulturhauptstadt, Chemnitz war Kulturhauptstadt. Und wir haben immer versucht, unsere Kultur zu zeigen, damit die deutschen Leute auch zu uns kommen, uns kennenlernen und auch uns also helfen bei Veranstaltungen und anderen Themen. Und noch seit Juni, das sind ein paar Bilder, wir waren schon bei verschiedenen Veranstaltungen in der Stadt Chemnitz. Das war zum Beispiel in der Kulturwoche, das waren wir dieses Jahr auch dabei. Da haben wir unsere Bilder aus Afghanistan auch gezeigt und das Essen. Und was gute Erfahrungen, positive Erfahrungen bei dieser Veranstaltung war, viele Einwohner von Chemnitz zu uns gekommen und mit uns in Gespräch gekommen und wir haben ein sehr interessantes kulturelles Gespräch gehabt mit den vielen Bürgern, die hier wohnen und die haben sich echt gefreut, dass wir sowas hier in der Stadt machen. Und auch, wir haben eine Tanzgruppe gegründet, das traditionelle Tanzgruppe aus Afghanistan, weil nach meiner Meinung Kultur ist was eine wichtige Ding, dass die Leute mit zusammenbringen kann. Und deswegen haben wir eine Tanzgruppe gegründet, dass wir können unsere Tanz auch durch Kultur mit den Leuten einfach Kontakt aufnehmen und die zeigen, dass was afghanische Kultur ist hier in Chemnitz oder alle Migranten, die hier sind, die haben auch eine Träume, ein Ziel und die alle wollen hier was machen, weil als Medien, die hier sind, leider die sind, also wie ich kann das erzählen, es ist ein bisschen schwierig immer. Ich versuche mal das zu erzählen, weil die machen nicht ihre Arbeit richtig, muss ich sagen, weil wenn eine Dinge passiert ist, wenn eine Migrante der Hintergrund ist, dann ist es ein großes Thema leider in der Gesellschaft, in Medien besonders. Es gibt viele Diskussionen darüber. Aber wenn eine andere Person ist, dann ist es normal, also so Leben, dass wir jeden Tag leben. Weil nach meiner Meinung, Kriminalität hat nichts zu tun mit Nationalität. Es kann sein, dass wir sind Mensch, wir machen immer Fehler und dadurch es kann passieren, dass eine Person das macht was von unseren Migranten zum Beispiel und wir müssen nicht alle Migranten, die hier sind, die machen sehr gute Dinge von dieser Gesellschaft und viele Fachkräfte, die in Deutschland arbeiten, also ein großer Teil sind die Migranten, die aus Ausland gekommen sind oder die hier geboren sind oder studieren haben und die machen was Gutes von diesem Land. Und so ist die Deutschen auch. Also das ist immer ein bisschen schwierig, weil wir führen diese Diskussion immer in unserem Verein, in unseren Projekten. Und unser Ziel ist, dass wir ein besseres Bild zeigen für unsere Leute und für Migranten, die hier sind. Wir haben viele erfolgreiche Migranten in Chemnitz, die arbeiten schon, die haben die Sprache gelernt, die haben hier studiert, die haben Ausbildung gemacht, die arbeiten schon hier seit langer Zeit und die leben hier seit langer Zeit und die nennen Deutschland als ihre zweite Heimat. Und diese Erfahrung leider ist immer traurig bei uns, auch mit den Medien, wie reagieren sie sich über die Themen. Und das Politik, obwohl wir haben schon viele Probleme in diesem Land, also Migranten sind eine Teil von Problemen von Politikern, aber wir haben noch viele andere Probleme in Deutschland zurzeit. Also ich nenne ein kurzes Beispiel für Rentner. Wir haben schon große Probleme, Rentner. Da haben viele Probleme, die haben voll in diesem Land gegeben, seit langem gearbeitet, aber die meisten, die bei uns in Sonnenberg, die unser Ort ist bei Projekt, die kamen auch viele Rentner und Rentnerinnen, die Deutsche sind, die haben schon seit langem gearbeitet, in großen Stadt auch. Und die sagen, wir haben schon viel von diesem Land gegeben, aber jetzt, wenn wir brauchen was zu zurücknehmen, und die Land holen sie uns nicht einfach so. Und deswegen ist es sehr wichtig, wenn wir wollen eine Stadt schaffen, das für alle gehören, für alle Generationen, für alle Eltern, dass wir zuhören von den Leuten, Migranten, ältere Menschen, für Frauen, was sie Bedürfnisse haben. Und ja, nicht nur zuhören, sondern wir müssen das Gefühl geben, als Stadt meinte ich, dass die Meinung von den Leuten wichtig sind. Wenn sie eine Entscheidung treffen will, also ich kann das so erzählen, wenn ich als Bürger hier in Chemnitz oder als Bürgerin hier lebe, muss ich das Gefühl haben, wenn eine Entscheidung in die Stadt treffen, meine Meinung ist auch dabei. Also wenn die wollen eine Entscheidung über mich, über meine Familie oder über meine Zukunft treffen, die haben an mich auch gedacht, die haben meine Meinung auch ernst genommen. So können wir eine Stadt schaffen, für alle gehört. Für eine bessere Stadt, für eine Stadt, die alle gehören, müssen die alle Meinung einfach ernst nehmen. Und wir müssen das Gefühl haben, dass unsere Stimme zählt. Egal woher wir kommen, egal welche Sprache wir sprechen, egal was unsere Religion ist. Einfach, wir sind hier und wir müssen das machen. Und die Stadt muss mit uns auch mitmachen. Vielen Dank.
Yeah, thanks a lot for all your contributions, and I think it's an interesting. Yeah, it created an interesting panorama almost, or bridge between things. And maybe before we move in again, quite concretely into the situations you were talking about, I would pass on the task to you. I mean, you already made the connection in your talk to concrete also social situations and social change. But I was wondering also, because you were talking a lot about the counter archive and the idea, and the way it's about, I think what also was presented is about the counter futuring or counter presence, maybe counter futuring. So can you connect a bit the idea of the palimpsest to the struggles, to the concrete struggles and works that you heard afterwards? How does it function with this metaphor and or tool that you introduce?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, definitely so. I had the impression that the projects by the two of you were, of course, hands-on projects more, but of course these projects are in cities, and in that sense, or are kind of take place in cities, are carried out in cities. Berlin, for example, or Toronto was your example, and then Chemnitz. And I think the question of participation in a city is a vital one, and you mentioned it at the end of your talk. So who has the right to the city? And I think here is, so to say, the connection to the literary archives that I was talking about. Of course, literature can only represent, and the literary examples I gave were representations of something that already happened. Your hands-on projects are still working, and it's always interesting to see how then these workshops or these initiatives how they are perceived by scholars later on, or how we can work with them even together from an academic point of view as well. So I see a very strong connection between hands-on projects and research, in particular also when it comes to the question of the social in the city, because I think my examples were fairly well outlined, so to say, the loss, the destruction, the eviction aspects, and therefore it is important really to participate and to make things different.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's interesting also because you describe this palimpsest seems to be rewritten mostly by the capitalist mode of doing things at the moment, and then we have two ways of trying to maybe rewrite this palimpsest in a different way. And Sajad, I'm quite impressed also by the, let's say, the optimism that you seem to have. I mean, not only by the strength and the power in your project, but also by the optimism you have. And actually, that's almost a bit, maybe a bit untypical for a lot of conversations in recent years. And you gave a lot of concrete examples how you work and how you also empower people and work with people. If you could, maybe not completely utopian, but maybe a little bit unrealistic, say what changes, maybe concrete changes that you would think in a city like Chemnitz should be done to create a different city. You said, okay, it needs to be listened to the people that are not listened to enough, but what would be then the outcome out of this listening? Would you have concrete proposals of how the city could change or should change? And you, please also do it, you can of course do it in German also. So.
Okay, also ich werde auf Deutsch das antworten, weil ich habe seit langem nicht Englisch gesprochen, seit als ich nach Deutschland gekommen bin. Also in Chemnitz, so ist okay, ne? Ja. Also in Chemnitz, wir brauchen einfach die Bürgerinnen, die hier wohnen, die lokal, sage ich mal, also mehr über Thema Migration informieren. Also es gibt ein großes Thema hier in Chemnitz, das sind immer falsche Informationen, die jeden Tag in Medien oder Social Media oder die anderen Sachen, die geben die Leute falsche Informationen über viele Sachen, über viele Dinge. Das, was wir können ändern hier in Stadt Chemnitz, ist, die Leute einfach besser informieren lassen. Nicht nur, was ich gehört habe, akzeptieren, nicht, was ich in einer Zeitung gelesen habe. Das sind nicht immer Realität. Und wir müssen einfach, wenn wir an was glauben, müssen wir ein bisschen recherchieren darüber, ob das richtig ist oder nicht. Das wollte ich immer gerne machen. Also am einfachsten Sachen muss ich sagen, das Mitmachen von den Leuten, die hier geboren sind oder hier lokal sind, und einfach mit den anderen Leuten, die hier neu sind in Chemnitz oder die haben Probleme noch, mithelfen. Nicht nur also von Social Media hören oder lesen von also auf den Zeitungen oder was die Politikerinnen sagen immer, muss man selber auch ein bisschen recherchieren und herausfinden, ob das echt richtig ist oder nicht. Und das Problem haben wir immer leider in Chemnitz. Ich werde eine kurze Geschichte erzählen, wenn ich darf.
So maybe I just give a brief summary, so that you said it's mainly about information. So people should get more information about the people that they don't know, the newly arrived people, and so on, and that there's a lot of misinformation at the same time, and that it would be necessary also for people to, in a way, check themselves and get into contact themselves and not just trust for the images that are perpetrated.
And to be open for other people and other cultures. That would be like to change here. Like this, also ich habe seit meiner Tätigkeit mit den verschiedenen Projekten habe ich sehr coole Leute kennengelernt, die machen mit, die sind ganz offen von alles. So würde ich gerne am meisten sehen von die Leute, die einfach offen sind für alle.
You wanted to add something, or because you said you wanted to add another? Okay. Du wolltest noch eine weitere Sache erzählen?
Die zwei Sachen wollte ich auf jeden Fall also in die Stadt Chemnitz mehr sehen. Oder wenn ich das Power habe, was zu ändern, wäre dieses zweite Thema sehr wichtig für mich zu ändern.
But you do that with a lot of initiatives and projects, but always very, like it's in one place and you're only a couple of people and so do you think that there could be structurally or on a bigger scale something changed that would help with this, or what would that be? Should there be a certain policy implemented, a different way of things being organized, or I don't know, how what could support you in this struggle?
Mehr Projekten bestimmt, Projekten, die, kann ich sagen, eine Projekte, die sich, die Leute können miteinander kommen einfach und ein Gespräch durchzuführen, was wir hier haben heute, einfach ein paar mehr, also Migranten und mehr also die Deutschen kommen zusammen, ein Gespräch führen zusammen. Und wir können voneinander viel lernen, weil wir sind zwei ganz unterschiedliche Kulturen. Und wenn dieser Unterschied muss unser starkes Punkt sein, unser Starke sein, nicht schwache, also wie hier jetzt sind. Und ja, diese Gespräche helfen am meisten. Und wenn wir haben wie die Veranstaltungen, dieses Jahr war Kulturhauptstadt in Chemnitz, Die haben auch viel geholfen, weil wir konnten unsere Kultur zeigen, wir konnten mit den Leuten in Gespräch kommen. Also wenn ich sage, die Leute, die hier wohnen und am meisten die hier sind auch in der Stadt auch arbeiten, wir haben das sehr positive Erfahrungen dieses Jahr gesammelt durch unsere Projekte, das wir gemacht haben. Und dieses Jahr waren wir Kulturhauptstadt. Ich hoffe von nächstes Jahr, obwohl wir nicht mehr Kulturhauptstadt sind, dass wir weiter sowas Veranstaltungen haben in der Stadt. Damit können wir alle zusammenkommen und die Zeit genießen einfach. Also, weil gegen Hass können wir nur mit Liebe kämpfen, nicht mit anderen Sachen. Ja.
Thank you. Darren, in a way I think that was already a bridge also to what you are doing, and I think like what I was wondering, in a way your lecture stopped short before the moment where the question would have come in, okay, can these things also be scaled up? Can they be implemented? What can we learn from your experiments, which are very concrete and have a lot to do, I think, with learning and listening to each other and getting in contact, not only via mediators but in direct contacts. I think that's very much related to it. So do you have experiences in scaling this up? Are you consulted by companies or by city municipalities to learn something from your projects?
Well, there was in the slide that we've worked with a number of different organizations and devised long-term youth engagement with the same kind of secession model as an idea. I mean, it's really difficult when you get into larger organizations. We've had individual successes, everywhere we've done it. Mammalian, the Mammalian Diving Reflex, the collective or company that started this, we're able to bring these young people along the journey with us. With respect to those organizations, that has not been as successful. With an organization that's bringing us there to do an intervention there, they, for whatever reason, and there's a lot of reasons, and that's sort of the next thing for myself is to figure out exactly what are the necessary and sufficient conditions that will produce a positive outcome. But a lot of it really has to do with needing champions that are there as lifers. And the most successful one that we had was with the Rutrinel Festival. Then we sort of moved along and followed a dramaturg, Katrin Rose, to the Bochum Schauspielhaus, and then she has since now gone to Hanover Stadttheater. And so with her came a bunch of young people, and we continued to work with her. And her daughter, in fact, was one of them, and that kept Katrin's interest in the long-term project. Now she's in Hanover. We're bringing some people there to work with her. But it's difficult. It's really difficult without somebody who is there championing it. And we're working at the Humboldt Forum right now, which is probably the most difficult place that we have. There's all these people, there's all these resources, but the machine is moving so quickly or so slowly, I'm not sure what, but to convince people to bring these young people into their lives. And there we're working with a bunch of young people from the Mekisches Viertel. Most of them are Muslim background. There's maybe two-thirds of them are Turkish and otherwise, and we're having some success. We're finding individuals, but again, Mammalian can plug those young people in. The larger institution has a hard time because the people aren't there keeping it in their minds all the time, and that's sort of the next problem. We have to figure out how to do that without necessarily having those kinds of champions. We've got mild champions at the Humboldt Forum, but it's so hard. It's really hard.
But it's interesting. One thing we talked about 2 editions ago, we talked about neighborhoods, and one thing we were talking about was that it needs a continuation. So the idea of the lifers that you brought in. So what is the continuation? How long also artistic projects? How long do they stick around? We were talking a lot about also artistic interventions, and sometimes artists come like a cultural capital. It comes, lands, and then goes. So, and what's afterwards? And of course, everybody knows that and is talking about it. But it's very difficult to create continuity, and then things are also changing back very fast where we've seen something. So I think that's probably an important part of it. So, also if you have questions already or soon, auch in Deutsch, just raise your hand and wave, so I might not see you otherwise.
I try in English and switch to German if I don't know the English word. My name is Bianca. I grew up around Chemnitz, Erzgebirge, and I'm now living in Bavaria, and I'm hosting a social cultural project there, and I have a similar question working with youth as well. And my question is not how to upscale projects, but how to deepen them, to give them sustainability and to help communities to sustain themselves, that I become obsolete, like not needed anymore. And how do you, in all of your projects, maybe find more depth and sustainability in the local context instead of upscaling all the time, maybe as another answer to these kind of developments and cultural work?
I mean, with respect to the deepest we've done it is in Toronto. There's individuals who we've worked deeply in other places that are coming along for the journey. I think really, the biggest thing that's important, I think, for that, to answer that question is long-term considered in terms of decades, where you will still have to be there. This idea of, passing it on, I think being there in one way or another for a long time. Now those young people that I first met when they were 10, they're 29 years old. Now it feels like in the next few years we'll be ready to really give them the company. But that's been, since 2005, and I'm 60 now. I've been doing that since I was 40, and so it's really to be utopian takes time. I think that's the biggest thing, for me.
Yeah, I would also like to respond to it in a different way, perhaps with regard to the European Capital of Culture and sustainability of at least some of the project. I mean, this is the idea behind it, that there are 2 or 3 or even 4 flagship projects that will be continued on the one hand. On the other hand, we have to go back, so to say, to a certain degree of discussion. And I think that the next year, like the years before the bid book was submitted, the next year will give us a chance here in Chemnitz again, which will also perhaps affect an organization like yours, to come in again and to voice concerns again, or to voice something, what they want, what they need here in the city, in order to come together and put together projects that will be sustained. Yeah, so because the money won't be there anymore, that's of course a fact. But we have quite a number of places and spaces that have been created where we can meet, where this discourse can continue, and give us a chance to think about what does Chemnitz need in the future, also with regards to migrants, refugees, etc. How can we get back together, and what kind of projects do we want in the future? And there's one project which is the International Theatre Festival, which will be there next year, and there will be, of course, quite a number of other projects coming along, but it cannot be Kulturhauptstadt or capital of culture anymore. But yeah.
Like that you mentioned the bid book. I learned already 2 editions ago that the bid book is a very important piece of literature and a very specific genre of literature. Also, and as I learned, also palimpsestic in a way, because it was rewritten in a way. Before we have the next question, maybe Sajad, I wonder, in terms of building structures that are sustainable and contained, but I imagine and I know that in the daily work, on running and trying to make possible, it's very difficult to also think about parallelly about how things can be sustainable and so on, because it's like, I guess, often a survival from day to day and managing from day to day. Are you able to work on structures that you hope will continue, maybe even without you?
Also, als wir dieses Projekt angefangen haben, also Es war nur eine Idee. Also wir hatten nichts anzufangen, aber wir haben das geschafft. Wir hatten sehr nette Leute kennengelernt, die haben uns Orte angebietet, damit wir können einfach starten. Und von Anfang haben wir das Projekt auf unsere Tasche, also angefangen mit unser eigenes Geld. Und da waren wir keine Forderung von der Stadt. Aber wenn wir das angefangen haben, dann haben wir unser Projekt vorgestellt von der Stadt und wir haben vor letztes Jahr eine Forderung bekommen. Das war nicht viel, aber war genug, also weiterzumachen, wie du gesagt hast. Es ist wie Tag nach dem Tag, also für so Weiterlebensprojekt. Aber nach meiner Meinung, wir haben von nichts angefangen und wir haben viel geschafft letztes Jahr auch und dieses Jahr auch und wir können das weitermachen einfach. Was wichtig ist, dass man ein Ziel hat und langfristig einen Plan hat von diesen Sachen. Und das haben wir in unserem Projekt und wir werden das schaffen. Ist nicht einfach, sage ich mal, wegen Geld. Dieses Jahr haben wir viele Schwierigkeiten gehabt, wegen Forderung, und sowas. Aber wir haben ein gutes Team bei unserem Projekt und ich hoffe, dass wir weiter in mehr Jahren, nicht nur eine, sondern mehr Jahre in Chemnitz.
So you also hope, you worked step by step and built something that was quite successful and actually grew already, and you kind of hope that it will give enough drive that it also can continue.
Also Hoffnung ist die große Dinge, die man hat immer, weil ich habe mein ganzes Leben in einem Nacht verloren und musste ich alles verlassen. Ich hatte meine Karriere, also ich hatte alles, was ich brauchte zum Leben in meiner Heimat, aber in einem Nacht ich habe alles verloren und bin ich nach Deutschland gekommen, neuen Land, neue Sprache, die ich nie in meinem Leben vorgestellt, dass ich gehe nach Deutschland und ich lerne deutsche Sprache und bis jetzt habe ich ein bisschen geschafft und diese Hoffnung war immer mit, okay, ich mache weiter, so das Leben ist so, muss man jeden Tag Hoffnung haben und weiter einfach machen, also das Leben wird nicht einfacher, sondern du wirst ein bisschen stärker als hier so gestern. Das war immer in meinen Gedanken.
Thank you. And Darren, you were wanting to add something?
The other thing I wanted to add, just to respond to your question, was the other thing that has been important is acknowledging that long-term impact in a meaningful way you have to have low numbers of people that you're engaging with, which funders do not like, and that's really a challenge, is to make them happy with that. And to prove impact over time, you need low numbers, but then once you get a little bit of impact, you report on that impact, but I think low numbers and real lots of one-on-one time, obviously. Yeah.
Julia, you had yes, please.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Julia Naunin. I'm from the program team of Cultural Capital until tomorrow. And I was responsible for the Living Neighborhood flagship project in which we did a previous Art of Assembly. I'm searching for the palimpsestic link in between the three of you, and I just want to resonate one thing. I love to listen to you because you sound like the typical Chemnitz person. The fame of the Chemnitz people is that they are the Macher, the maker. So it's exactly that what you commit. And this palimpsestic link, I think about, somehow it has, for me, in my association, to do with information and documentation. So I would say, Darren, I assume that documentation is a key figure even if it is palimpsestic and changes in a processual way, to come to this continuity and to prolong impact, and maybe even to enforce structures in administrational organizations. Can you follow me? This is a complex thought. It's just, I assume it has something to do with documentation or, as you said, information. Would you like to respond to that?
I don't have the easiest time with this palimpsest as it applies to other than we started with these guys when they're 10, and we're constantly rewriting our roles. And you know, a 10-year-old is not the same as a 29-year-old. They have very different roles, but they've been with us that long. And so there's always the rewriting of the company and the rewriting of the structures in the company and the relationships in the company. I'm not sure if that to me is the biggest, the sort of thing that makes sense to me. The neighborhood itself has changed, and it's not what it was 20 years ago. It's very different now. So that's changed, and we've all changed, and many of those young people moved out. But I think it's the relationships between us that have been rewritten over and over again. To me, makes the biggest connection.
Yeah, and I think, thank you for the question. And I also think the not only documentation or information, but also representation, I think that's also an important aspect. And what Darren has said about identity, of course, it's also a question of cultural identity, and people change, places change. And what you have just said, I mean, everyone is being overwritten constantly in their roles and how people are represented also, in my case now, in literary texts. Yeah, so I think there is a connection, definitely so, when it comes also, because in literary texts that I presented, there was also always a hands-on kind of project, you know? And in the end they are documented somehow, like the artworks are documented, photographed, etc. So you have the different layers that come together and form also sources of discourse again.
So in terms of the idea of the palimpsest, I guess the idea would be, and of course that's not just a nice peaceful way, I guess, how can this big rewriting of as you also mentioned, the kind of capitalist mode we are in, the neoliberal mode we are in, how can there a rewriting or a different writing happen if there's a permanent rewriting? Your example was the Acropolis, so it was just 100 years, but this is what we know. Everything else is in the rubble underneath, and part of it is in the British Museum of this 100 years even. So there's another rewriting happening. So is it even possible with what you describe and to counter this narration, and what parts of the palimpsest would it be in the corners maybe where you see there's a different writing? And we had one example in Manchester of an important club for mixed race people in the 70s, which was literally carved out again like an archaeological site. So because it was not visible anymore, it was gone, and it was a struggle to in this rewriting of the city to bring up some older memories. And I guess literature also plays a role in this, even though it's kind of a mourning literature that you presented, it is keeping something alive. So yes, I guess it's a question how palimpsestic can all these attempts be?
Yeah, as said, literature can only be seen as a representation, I would say, as a place where or as something that we can use as an archive, and would be interesting to write about, or if you started to write about your own Verein and institution, and if people started to write about it and collect ideas, maybe this would be also a start to commemorate or to make it well known. And what comes to mind, to my mind, not just only as literature, but also as how can we say, as a moment of memory is that in 2022 there was here on the Johannesplatz, they discovered this Jewish mikveh, and I think this is a very good example of a palimpsest because it's from the 17th century, and it's a Jewish mikveh is a cleansing ritual, cleansing bath for women, and it's really directly by the river Chemnitz, which is underneath. So and it came to the fore when the digging was being done, and it has been photographed, documented, written about. There will be an exhibition opening on the 17th of December, showing all these documents and etc. And now what has happened is it has been put into a cocon of concrete and sand, and nobody can see it anymore. So it's gone again. It's underneath the earth, and there is this pink house or department store that's been built on top of it. Yeah. So and I find this quite interesting as an example because a colleague of mine who is working in the human and technology, he has been working with it and created an app. For researchers. So with all the information, all the documents, all the written words, he has collected together with all the pictures of the mikveh in the app in a teaching project, so at university, and you can use the app to do research on this mikveh, and you can see the three-dimensional photos, etc. And I think this is now maybe another form of engagement or of making aware of things being lost, being erased in a city. So to ask about what can be done, how can we get involved in cities as people who live here. Of course, maybe we can also use virtual reality or artificial reality to document that what has gone lost. And apart from literature, of course, who documents often, of course, literature, in my case, in a more fictional way, often. But nonetheless, as I said, they are testament to how we lived, to how communities lived, or to how certain structures were formed, and how a community around this used it in the earlier times. Yeah? So it's a kind of urban memory, maybe.
Was ich kann sagen ist, wir brauchen mehr Verstattung in der Stadt, damit wir direkt mit den Leuten Kontakt haben. Damit können wir in ein Gespräch kommen, damit können wir mit denen einfach direkt reden. Wir können das, also Dokumentation ist sehr gut, aber wenn wir können live mit den Leuten sprechen, also einfach unter 4 Augen, warum machen wir das nicht mehr in der Stadt? Es ist, nach meiner Meinung, es ist besser immer, wenn wir direkt mit den Leuten einfach reden, direkt austauschen, wenn wir Probleme haben oder wenn wir was haben zu fragen. Das können wir direkt von den Leuten, die in der Stadt sind, oder wir treffen uns in verschiedenen Veranstaltungen. Wir können direkt anfragen oder die Meinungen austauschen. Das wäre nach meiner Meinung eine besser, als wir alles dokumentieren können, und vielleicht weil die Leute, am meisten die Leute, die jetzt sind, vielleicht haben keine Lust zu lesen, also nicht am meisten, aber es gibt immer die Leute, die haben keine Lust zu lesen. Sie werden das direkt mit den Leuten einfach alles sagen unter 4 Augen. Das finde ich immer besser.
Maybe then, also slowly coming to the end, come back to the question. You have already several proposals in the air, but maybe to push it a bit further. So what would be your proposals in implementing? Maybe so you, for example, you talk about talking to each other, so, and there are many other things in the air now. Like, so what could be implemented in a city like Chemnitz or any other city? Like, how could even if it's utopian, if you could start a city from the scratch in terms of, no, it doesn't have to go that far, but also that would be not very palimpsestic to start from the scratch. So I take it back. If you could scratch down some parts of the city that exist, what would really help? Like, is it for example, in creating these spaces where you would meet? Is it different kind of spaces? Is it different kind of schools? Is it different kind of, like, is it something completely different? So if you would can maybe as final words from each of you make a big demand and a big proposal, what would that be?
I mean, it's just straight from my talk would be just a different, the cultural institutions are a great spot to try a different relationship to the very local community, and the people in that local community to start that with would be the little kids, and conceiving of the relationship being a long-term relationship, and cultural institutions thinking of themselves as cultural co-parents of particular populations, and that would be my utopian wish, and it's hard, and we've tried that in so many other spots, but when it has worked so well for us, and we have such great relationships, and the relationships have changed us, and we know things that we don't know, all of us, the whole team, and that's become an international team, and I just think that there's a lot of potential for this model. That's my utopian wish.
Thank you.
My utopian wish would be to write and share stories, write together. I've been editing a creative writing journal at my chair together with my colleague, and this year we have our 7th edition out. It's called Turning Pages. We came up with it in 2018 due to that was what happening here with regards to the right-wing demonstrations in Chemnitz, and we thought we have to turn the page, metaphorically speaking, but also literally speaking, and I would love to share stories and have more people write for the journal. It's in English, unfortunately, but that's my profession. On the other hand, to also share the stories in open spaces, and I think we have a wonderful open space, and I don't know whether this will be continued behind the Karl Marx head bust, which was rented by the Kunstsammlungen, and we enjoyed being there, giving readings there. It was just wonderful, but also to go on maybe walks together and read stories. That would be and to explore the city, to explore spaces and to write about them, and then come up with new ideas of what we can do. I mean, usually what is happening here in Chemnitz is that we have investors who decide, so to say, where and what to build, and that's often in cityscapes like this. That's everywhere the case, and we have to explore spaces more and write about them and make petitions and say, no, we don't want this pink house here at the Brückenstraße or whatever, which is the new department store and which has just been built without people even being involved in deciding. So we need decision making at a very bottom line level where people get engaged and involved.
Thank you. Sajad, you have the final words.
Okay, also ich wünsche mir, dass alle Leute, die wir in Chemnitz sind oder egal in Deutschland, dass wir zusammenleben, können wir in Frieden leben miteinander und miteinander klarkommen. Müssen wir nicht immer fragen, woher wir kommen. Und einfach, wir sind Mensch hier, wir leben hier und wir wollen hier auch wohnen und mit allen Leuten mit Respekt und mit Kulturaustausch, mehr Kulturaustausch zusammenleben, einfach in Frieden. Weil das brauchen wir jetzt mehr als vor, dass die Situation in der Welt ist sehr gefährlich und also Liebe brauchen wir mehr als Hass jetzt. Und das wünsche ich mir immer, dass wir in Frieden und Liebe zusammenleben. Alle Menschen, die hier sind.
Thank you very much. Perfect last words for this evening. So I thank you very much for joining this conversation, and thank you as well for joining. And have a nice, I guess, end of Cultural Capital party, and hopefully not a headache afterwards, but some of this surprisingly optimistic voices tonight. That maybe also, that things will continue here. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Danke.